Hey guys, Barry Melody here with another episode of the Comeback Game Inspired and Unstoppable. Today, I have Julian Pace, the CEO and founder of Happiness Co. And pretty excited for Julian to share both his message, his challenges, his adversities, what he's been through, and most importantly too, what happiness is all about. Julian, how you going, mate?
Mate, good to see you, buddy. I'm going super well, mate. Hello, big high five from Happiness Co. for everyone watching this podcast. Mate, pumped to be here, mate, and super excited to share about what Happiness Co. does and I guess the lives it's touching, mate.
Yeah, cool. So, mate, let's start with a little bit about you. But I think before we get into Happiness Co, I think it'd be nice to kind of share with the guys out there. Obviously, I know you quite well, but I think it'd be nice to share with the guys out there that are watching, listening to this, a little bit about your background story, some of the stuff that you've been through, which will create a good premise for kind of sharing more around the mission that you're on currently.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the reason why Happiness Co exists is nearly more important than Happiness Co itself. So I'll start all the way back at high school. So give people some contrast of where my challenges really began. So I dropped out of year 8 in the first week of year 8, because I couldn't read, couldn't write. And for anyone that's watched the movie Billy Madison before, and he's up to today junior, that was really so much of my life growing up at school because I have severe dyslexia and I still struggle with dyslexia today. So to read and write. So I've got a great team around me to support me in that process. But as you can imagine, leaving school at year 8 at 13 years old, I remember my principal and my teacher and my mum. And I remember the principal saying to my mum, and I'm sitting right there, saying, he's never going to equate to anything. If he can't obtain knowledge by reading the book, he's never going to be able to take that knowledge and be able to get a job that he gets paid well and has a fulfilling life. And you walk out of that room and you think, maybe I'm never going to be good enough. Maybe I'm never going to be worthy. And then my first job was, doing the garden bin disposal, cleaning up people's lawn mowing. And I was doing that at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And for so much of my, teenage years, I thought that was my life and that's what it was going to be. And it's really hard to believe in yourself when the world told you because you couldn't read, you're not enough.
Yeah.
And then I went on as you grow up, you start to get interested in girls and, your life starts to change a little bit there. And I started playing football and I really found some passion and some joy in football. And that gave me some self-confidence. And I started really building, self-worth from that, which is at least I'm good at something. Maybe I'm not good academically, but at least I was good on the football field. And I started to really express the version of me that was confident. And then I guess this is where my story really begins. And I call it about the moments of impact in our life that shape and define us and sometimes derail us. On my 21st birthday, so 21, I woke up in the morning, not to the news of it being my 21st birthday, but to the news that my father had taken his own life. And I'm sure you can imagine, mate, in a moment, it's like the lights went out. And it's probably the best way I can explain how it happened. Like imagine, your life in full HD one day earlier and, you're excited about the prospect of turning 21. And I had a birthday party that weekend with all my friends coming. And then to wake up to know that your father's taken his own life, it changes you, mate. And it's like someone literally went into my life and switched off the light switch. And it's in a moment it went completely black. And then from there, it was just a downhill spiral, mate. I couldn't understand why he did it. I couldn't work out how to grieve properly. I didn't know the words to say or the help to seek. And then I just became so erratic and so lost and so full of pain and suffering. And I'm a big believer in pain is real and suffering is a choice. But back then I didn't know that. So, drinking too much and partying too much and not expressing myself for what was going on. And I can remember it so vividly now, like it was yesterday. I used to wake up in the morning every single day, mate, and hate the person I became. Like I hated the person I was. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I used to sit there every single night and pray I didn't have to wake up in the morning because the pain was so gut-wrenchingly hard. And it was like a broken heart, like intensified though. And then 2 years after losing my father to suicide, I lost my best friend and my cousin all in a week. So I lost 3 people in 3 years to suicide. I'm sure listening can imagine life is never really the same after something like that.
Shit. I can't even imagine, like you said, the high highs, the low lows, you're 20 years old, about to turn 21, and then to get a phone call that your dad's passed. Man. And tell me, what was I'm really curious to know, what was the grieving process like? Because it wasn't like you even had a chance to kind of find your way back before you received another one of those phone calls. And like most people in their life, they lose some people they love, but to lose people that still had life ahead of them. You know, it wasn't like they were, you know, into retirement, seeing the last days out. Like, your dad still had a lot of life left of him. Your cousin still had a lot of life left of him. Like, what was that like for you? And the second question too is, like, how did it impact the way that you've seen life as well?
Yeah, a great question, mate. And, you know, my dad was 44 when he took his own life. That's so young, man. You think about that life, it's so young. And I remember thinking this all the time, that the world had taken everything that I cared about, you know, and I shared the story before about me leaving school in year 8. You know, he was my role model. Like, I'm sure lots of people watching this, their parents at times are their role model. He was a real rock for me because he was really successful in business, and he also dropped out of school really young. So in so many ways, he represented what I could still be. And I remember him always saying, and as cliche as this is, he used to say, it doesn't matter what you say, it's what you do that defines you. Why do you fall? It's how you get back up. He always used to reconfirm the belief system, and don't let the world put you in a box. And for so much of my life, it was the reason I kept pushing, because I'm like, if he did it, I could do it. And then when he died, your belief system's really challenged. Like, I was thinking, why did he leave me? Like, why wasn't I enough? Why didn't he love me? He's never going to see my kids. He's never going to see me grow up and get married. I don't even know if he's proud of me. So it does change you. And I remember pushing away everyone that ever loved me after that. And I share this with a lot of people now, and with the work I do. I spent so much time, and I'm sure you can get this, so much time trying to build these walls to keep the pain and suffering out. I tried to protect myself from being hurt, so I pushed everyone away. Because I'm like, if my dad would leave me, everyone would leave me. And I had real issues with abandonment after that. 21 years old, I felt that I was always going to be left, and it really started to cause me some severe anxiety. About I didn't want to get close to anyone. In life, you know, in life you start losing stuff, and that's part of life, but you only learn that when things get taken from you, and no one teaches you how to grieve. And I do believe there's a big difference between grief. You know, you think about grief as the pillars that you kind of go through when you are in grief. Someone that dies through maybe a terrible accident, someone that dies because, you know, they're sick and maybe terminally ill, and there's a process to that. Someone dies, you know, when they're, you know, at old age, and that's just kind of their natural evolution of life, you know, living and dying. And then someone that takes their own life and it's gone in a moment. That's the hardest part, because the questions that you keep asking yourself aren't the questions that you ask in all other areas of grief. And the question I always ask myself is, why didn't I do enough? Why didn't I care enough? Why didn't I say the things I wanted to say to make him know that he was loved? And, you know, people always ask me this, you know, did my dad die because he was depressed? 100%, man. He died in depression, 100%. But it started all the way up in unhappiness, man. I remember it. I remember at 18 years old, I remember him changing. I remember him drinking too much. I remember him avoiding relationships and distracting. And I just wish I had the tools I had now all the way back then, because when you start to see these subtle shifts in people, when you have that self-awareness, sometimes you can intervene earlier. And I think that the reason I do the work now is to help people be aware of them signs and, I guess, them challenges earlier, rather than falling into a deep, dark hole and it's very hard to get yourself out of.
What do you think was that shift, you know, at 18 years old that you noticed in your dad? You know, obviously there was the external signs of like drinking and pushing people away and things like that. But what was... Do you have any idea what was going on for him at that point in time that created that shift?
Yeah, I would narrow it down to really two things, mate. A relationship with himself and self-worth. You know, my dad was successful in his own right, but I feel like he always had a challenge with feeling like he was good enough. So it was always about comparison. He had the nice houses and nice cars, and he had a really thriving company, and it was amazing what he did, right? My dad was an incredible man. He had this one remarkable gift, which is, he taught me this philosophy, really. It's a well-known saying, but he taught me it. He said, it's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel. And he had incredible ability to make people feel great. You know, people wanted to work with him. People wanted to do more with him. And he had this ability to inspire people around him. And at times, I think that he was so driven by, you know, that facade of being successful, and not just facade, he was successful, but all his significance and all his self-worth came from what he had, not who he was. And I think the little cracks were his relationship started to break down. And, you know, the number one reason for suicide in Australia is relationship breakdowns.
Yeah.
So I think it starts there. You know, when you have a lot of things in life, if you don't have love, then what's the point? And I think that's where he really started to suffer.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about what you just said as well is, like for your dad, it was that lack of belief and lack of self-love. But in many ways, we did pass, you took that on. You took on those same beliefs. You took on board that if only you had have done something different, if only you had have been good enough in some way, like I know I'm ad-libbing, but good enough, maybe that wouldn't have happened, right? Where the reality is that, you're a child, you're the son of your father. It wasn't your responsibility to look after him. Like it's not our responsibility to look after anyone outside of ourselves, but we can assist in that process. And I remember someone once said to me, they said, your children will always fulfill your unfulfilled dreams, so you better fucking dream big.
Yeah.
Right. But I've also seen that happen to the detriment as well. Like, as you know, we've worked in this space a lot as well with the performance psychology. And I've seen a lot of people that have grown up, stuck in the beliefs systems and the patterning of their parents. And so one thing I'm really curious to know with you is obviously, you've completely turned things around for yourself. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But before we do, like, what was that process like? For you? I'd love to kind of just for the people out there to kind of step through a little bit around, like we can share right now what's happening, but I think that for everyone out there, there's going to be a bit more value to kind of understand a few of the steps that you went through in yourself around kind of creating that, per se comeback game from being in a position, 21 years old, just lost your father, a little while later, losing your cousin, and it didn't stop there for you, right? So what were those kind of steps that you went through before that defining moment per se when in your life, you start to notice things turn around?
Yeah, I'll give a bit of, a summary of that 4 years and what it was like. I remember these things, right? I became such a victim. Only looking back now, I see it, right? So I used to justify, blame, and complain about everything. And I used to hurt people. I didn't even care. And I became such a closed off person because I was so heartbroken that there was no emphasis on doing good or being a good person. I used to, as I said before about waking up in the mirror and not knowing who you are anymore. I knew that I was a nice guy. I knew I was a good kid before my dad died. But in that moment, I didn't care anymore. I was so reckless. Like to me, if I was to die, I'd be lucky. So everything I did, if I pushed people away, I won. If I was to die, I'd be lucky. So that's how I lived my life, mate. I was so reckless. And the more people that didn't like me, it fueled the belief system I didn't deserve love. The reason why, because the person who loved me most left me. And I remember his suicide note. His suicide note was all about how we failed him and didn't look after him, and we weren't there when he needed us most. And I used to read that every single night of my life, mate. Every time there was a bit of joy, every time that someone would pay me attention, like maybe a girl, and maybe I could turn into something like love. I remember the relationship I had not long after my father died. I just destroyed that because I truly believe at the core of who I am that if my dad was dead because I didn't do enough, then I didn't deserve love. And if my dad was dead because I didn't do enough, then I didn't deserve happiness. So I used to rob myself subconsciously and consciously of everything that was worth having in life. And I used to walk into rooms full of people, man, and feel completely alone. And I'm not a religious person, but I said this before, I used to pray and beg that I wouldn't have to wake up tomorrow. And then because I lost my brother and my best friend and my cousin all to suicide, I didn't want to take my own life. But you know this, that you have 50% more chance of taking your own life if one of your parents does. So I was actively plotting to take my own life every day. But the key was, but I couldn't make it seem like suicide. It had to be an accident. So I'm talking about walking across the street when I was drunk and just walking in front of a bus. These are things I'm consciously thinking about at 11 o'clock at night, mate, when I'm drunk. I see a bus coming. I'm like, it could be all over for me right now. I remember I live in Perth. I remember walking across the Causeway Bridges in Perth after being so drunk at the casino, getting in a fight. Getting into fights were a weekly occurrence for me because I wanted to feel physical pain because I couldn't deal with the emotional pain. I remember walking across the Causeway Bridge, mate, on the rails. That was the water. That was the road. And I'm just thinking, fall to your left, mate, fall to your left, it'll all be over. And sometimes the internal voice, mate, becomes so powerful that you just want the pain to go away. And I didn't actually want to die. I didn't actually not want to be here. I actually just wanted the pain to stop. And I couldn't work out what to do to make it stop. It doesn't matter what I said, what I did. It's like the harder I tried, the more distant I became. I avoided, I distracted. And before you know it, you're completely lost in life. That was probably a bit of a snapshot. And, just not your dad, like your best friend, like he was with me since I was 13, man. And he was there through my dad. He was there through my cousin. He was at my house on the Wednesday after my cousin took his own life. And I remember him saying to me, how could your cousin do that to you, your family, after what your dad did? And then the Saturday night, that night, he leaves a death note, takes his own life, saying the world just lost a cool dude. And imagine trying to understand that. and trying to put that together when the things that you care about get taken from you. And even though you have love, like I had my brother, my sister, my mom, and I had the abundance of love and people caring for me, I was so blind to see it. And, you know, and I think you think about that bucket of belief. It didn't matter what we poured in. It doesn't matter how much love people poured into my bucket. The hole down the bottom, which is the emptiness inside my heart, was so big that it didn't matter how much we poured in. It's an ongoing process of just feeling empty. Does that make sense?
That's incredible. Like how could you not be feeling pretty shitty about life after going through that? You know, a lot of people out there think that they've got problems and, you know, because they lost $20 at the casino or something silly like that. So when was the moment that it started to change? Like, when was the moment that you started to use that horrific experience or experiences, you know, to start to impact the way that you move forward powerfully in life? Like, what was the moment that you made a decision, you had a thought, you know, you met a mentor? Like, what was the moment that things started to change for you?
Yeah. And I reflect on it now, and I say this because it really probably resonates the most, that I took that pain and made it my purpose. I took that sadness and made it my strength. And I really, you know, really dug deep. And one of the things I realized, and people can resonate with this, we're all a victim in our life at different times. We're a victim because we get hurt in love. We're a victim in our jobs. We're a victim in our health and our wealth. And we all play that role so well because the world nearly naturally conditions us to be so. There was a real moment in my life that was a defining moment, is when I came home from work one particular day. And at this point in time, I worked for the government. So I came home from work and I was 24 and a half kind of thing, 25. And I came in and I came upstairs and, you know, my mum was in the kitchen. I was like, Mum, you know what? And I was complaining about something. It was something to do with work. And I was saying, you know what? People are always so bad to me. People treat me poorly. No one cares about me. It's like I'm always, you know, getting the short end of life. And I was just whinging and complaining. And this had been going on for 4 years, man, my erratic behavior. And something for my mum that really, really resonates with me. She sat down with me and said, Jules, I need to talk to you. And I said, yeah, cool. And she said, do you know how many nights that you go out at nighttime, and I never believe you're going to come home? She's like, I sit there and I fear that I'm going to get a phone call or you're never going to come back. And she started saying this to me, and it started triggering me. And then she started talking about how unlucky my life has been. She was like, you know what? You're so unlucky, Jules. You're so brave, but you're so unlucky. You know, you lost your dad, your best friend, and your cousin. Like, there's not many people that be able to go through that and still be able to cope every single day. She's like, you're such a brave human. But what I actually realized in this moment, man, she was actually patronizing me. Wow. So my mum was patronizing me, and I could see it in her eyes. I could see that she was welling up, and there was pain in her eyes because for the last 4 years of her life, she had been trying to nurture me, care for me, and give me unconditional love, but it wasn't working. The more she loved me, the more I pushed her away. The more she loved me, the more I became so outrageously reckless. And the more my brother and sister tried, the more I rejected it. So in that moment, it was being so bad, she started patronizing me. And I caught on to this because she was like, you're so brave. Like, you're an inspiration. She was saying things like, you're an inspiration to people. You should be so proud. And then I got up and I stood up at the table, and I've never been so angry at my mum. I rarely ever get angry at her. She's such an amazing human. She's so kind. And I could see in her eyes that she was so scared what would happen next, because it was going to go one of two ways, right? It was either I'm going to flip out and never coming home, and she knew that, or this might be the moment that helps me find the light again. And it was like a little pot on the table, and I threw it across the table and it smashed against the wall. And I said, you know what? You know what it's like to be me? You haven't lost anything in your life. I said, I lost my dad, my cousin, and my best friend. You sit here and tell me that I'm unlucky and you're patronizing me? And I stormed out. And I jumped in my car, man. I was so angry, man. I was so freaking angry at her. And I was holding onto the steering wheel driving. And I just started crying, man. I hadn't cried like that. No, I can't even remember a time I cried after losing my dad. I don't remember grieving. I don't remember grieving my father, my best friend, or my cousin. I didn't allow myself to feel it, right? And it just came, man. It was like an abundance of emotion. And I realized in that moment, I get goosebumps just thinking about it, I realized in that moment I was so freaking angry. But it wasn't at her. I was so angry at myself. I was so angry. It was like in a moment, man, I saw a flashback of all the people's lives that I had been destroying because of my own suffering. absolute selfishness of the man I had become, to my brother, to my sister, to my mum, to my friends, being so committed to my own misery and refusing to see their pain as well. And in that moment, I said I wanted to change. In that one moment, I said I wanted to be better. I wanted to do good. And it wasn't easy. It didn't just mean my life turned around like that. You talk about the reconditioning of a person. For 4 years of my life, all I thought about every single day was killing myself. And I wasn't worthy of love and I didn't matter and I hated the world. That's 4 years every single day. At 3 of them 4 years, I was reading my dad's suicide note every single night. Imagine that for positive mindset. So I had to then retrain myself to find positivity again. And one of the big things for me that gave me hope was I remembered being happy before. I remembered being 18, 19 and playing footy and, meeting girls and, still being and feeling like I had happiness. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happiness was back then, but to me it was. And I'm like, if I had been happy once before, then maybe I can find a way to find it again. That was where my hope and possibility started to come from. And lots of people ask me, how did you make your life like it is now? You travel the world and you speak with all these amazing people. You've got an incredible company. You've got an incredible team. How did you make your life better? And I think this is probably the real powerful part, is I didn't try to make my life better, mate. I just tried to make the day better. Because I had so many bad days. Every single day was full of suffering and misery. So what I started to do is I'm just going to wake up today, right? So today's Thursday. I'm just going to wake up Thursday and work out how I can do Thursday better and try and be better tomorrow than I was today. And it was a small steps, man, because I looked at my life and said, for me to get back to even finding happiness, to maybe overwhelming, like to get forgiveness in myself and for the people I hurt. Like I hurt so many people in that space, man. Broke so many hearts. And I share this because I think a lot of people hold on to their pain and their mistakes of yesterday. And I always say you're bigger than your pain and you're more than your problems. And you're definitely more than your mistakes. Yeah. But it takes a process to be able to forgive that, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll never forget, I remember years ago, I was massively sabotaging my life. And I remember that a mentor back then pulled me aside and said, Barry, the way that you do in life right now is like you're driving along in the car and you get a flat tire. That happens to all of us from time to time. And instead of you just getting out of the car, being pissed off or changing the tire or whatever, you pull a knife out and you stab the other 3 out.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, that's what you're doing to life. It's not that you're getting angry or upset or annoyed. You're then beating yourself up that you're getting angry or upset, annoyed. Then you're beating yourself up that you're beating yourself up, and the cycle never ends.
Ongoing, isn't it?
And that's what I see a lot in people is that things happen, but it's been a long time since that shit happened. It's time to let it go. It's time to focus on what can you do today to create a better tomorrow. And I love that approach. And that's something for me that's worked very well in relationships too, is just like, how can I just have the best experience today or this moment or this hour?
Exactly. And how do you appreciate the small things? And I think a big part of happiness, right? And people say, how do you measure happiness? There's a lot of things that measure a person's happiness, but really a big part of it is what you have and what you want. And if you can find a way to really appreciate what you have and fall in love with, the process of I get to, not have to, like I get to be in love. I get to go home and see my missus every day and give her a kiss on the lips. I get to wake up next to someone beautiful. I get to share and love and give it and receive it. When you get to do something, it's not a chore. But I think life becomes such a chore for people. I've got to go to work. I have to. You don't have to do anything in life, but we make it like such a mundane task. And as you said before, self-sabotage is such a big thing. And I remember, and this is going to, challenge some people's belief systems around how they see me right now listening. Because a lot of people hear me say this and like, I didn't expect that. I remember self-sabotage. Don't remember doing the self-sabotage, but I remember the behavior of it. I just didn't understand it at the time. I remember the girl that had been with me, day by day, side by side for my life for, 2.5, 3 years after I lost my dad. She ultimately was a big reason I'm still here. And my mum, right? The unconditional love and support from them. Without them two ladies in my life, I don't think I would have actually made it through. I guess that's the magnitude of how much they meant to me. And I felt myself getting so connected to this girl, and I felt like 2.5 years, I could trust her with everything. And she saw me at my darkest, saddest moments. I remember this turning point in my life, ranking like if I all chips in with her and give her everything of me, and then, love and pain go hand in hand together, right? You can't have love without pain. And I'm like, you know how I talked about these walls before and let everyone, you know, try to keep everyone out? It was like this crossroads between letting her in and being so vulnerable to maybe be hurt again. Like my dad broke my heart and my cousin and my best friend. And a week after my best friend died, I went and cheated on her. I cheated on her. I never did that. I cheated on her, right? And then she found out. And it wasn't like I was trying to hide it. I was a mess, mate. And she approached me about it. And she approached me not in a way that she was leaving me. She approached me because she wanted to help. And I flipped out, man. I flipped out and I pushed her away and I ended it. After 2.5 years, I said, you know what? Get out of my life. And I broke so many hearts like that because I was so busy, as you said, puncturing tires. I already punched a tire by the bad decision, but she wasn't leaving me. She wasn't abandoning me, but I made her leave because I then jumped out, as you just said, and popped all the other tires.
Just looking for more ways to hurt yourself. It was just more ways to beat yourself up because you were actually experiencing some form of love.
And for the first time, right, in that many years, I felt maybe I could be unconditional with someone. And maybe someone loved me in all my forms. And I think that, you know, I talked about this with my dad before about finding, you know, breaking down in love. There was a moment in my life when I had someone that was willing to love me, not just in my good times, because she was never there in them. She only had seen me in my darkest, but I was still lovable then. And I couldn't find a way to love myself. So there was never a chance of her loving me.
You know, something I think is really interesting when you talk about, you know, psychology, more so the creature neurology or the critter brain, is that the experiences that we learn to survive become the experiences that our continued survival depends upon. Right? So learning to survive such traumatic experience of death and loss, right, and all the associated emotions, to then not have that is almost unsurvivable once you've sat in that space for 3 to 4 years, as you mentioned. And so I like your approach, because this is where I see, like, a lot of these personal development gurus, they try to just, like, you got to take massive action and, you know, come out completely transformed. And it's like, what happens is people come out like they can walk on water, and then a week later they fucking crash because, neurologically speaking, they can't sustain that level of change. And this is what I find so fascinating about the elegant strategy that you ran quite unconsciously. Right? It came from survival of, let's just make today as good as possible and tomorrow better than yesterday. But in that process, as I'm sure you're aware, you allowed yourself to start to change your neurology and your beliefs and your state just 1 degree or half a degree at a time, which then over time hits that exponential curve of change to where all of a sudden now you have a system or a belief system that not only supports the growth, but now allows you to impact, you know, thousands of people, you know, through your own personal journey and what you've experienced, but ways of change for them. And so I'd love if you could share a bit more now around specifically, like, what is Happiness Co? How did Happiness Co come about, you know, as part of that journey of pain to purpose?
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, just quickly on that, what you mentioned before, I love the small bits, right? They're just the step-by-step process of making your life better. And I think you're right. All these big personal development gurus and a lot of the space, it's about just, you know, getting out your own way and smashing through procrastination. But without understanding the fundamental blueprint of a person, it's very difficult. And, without any really emotional drive, I did it. But I did it by doing the little things well. And my bad years, right? Years turned into, in that process, my bad months turned into bad weeks, and my bad weeks turned into bad days, and my bad days turned to bad maybe hours, and then to minutes. And ultimately what happened is the days became better. Like, you know what, it was just trying to get my runs on the board, man. It was like trying to get my confidence up. So I'd still have, you know, maybe 4 bad days and had 3 good ones, but I had 3 more better days than I had 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Tried to work on getting that to 50-50, right? And before you know it, and I still have difficult days and challenging days now, but the odds are in my favor now, which is I'll have 5 or 6 good days out of 7. And, you know, you still have to have contrast. You have the bad to appreciate the good and the hurt to happy. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost in all this. People are like, are you happy all the time? And I say, what do you think happiness is? Like, well, you're always smiling. I was like, well, that's not happiness. That's joy. That's an expression of an emotion. Happiness so much more about a relationship you have with some real key things about who you are, which is why happiness coexists.
Yeah, I love that part as well. Like, you know, the contrast part, because, you know, the false myth and the bullshit that a lot of people have fed is that you know, if you pay me enough money, you won't experience pain anymore. Like if you just do enough of my courses or my workshops, like every area of your business or life is just going to be successful, and like you won't ever have a worry in the world. And, you know, you can't get rich collecting one-sided coins. And this is the beauty about life, is if you can find a way to appreciate the bad days as much as the good days, your life becomes a lot more enriching and fulfilling than just waiting and counting out your bad days, waiting for a good one to come about. And so, you know, tell us a bit about Happiness Co. Like, what is it you guys do, and what's the mission that you guys are on?
Yeah, mate. And I think it all comes back to that moment when I decided to change my life. There was one real big thing I focused on. So think about how selfish I became in that 4 years I was telling you about, and the people I hurt. So the one strategy I went with, which is, okay, if I was so selfish and I became such a miserable person, I hurt people because of that, I want to make sure I completely flip that, which is I just picked contribution, right? I wanted to be a better son, a better brother, a better person, a better friend. So I focused all my time and attention in trying to do that, which is like, how can I not think about what I was getting, but what I was giving? Again, as you said before, quite unconsciously. Subconsciously, I just started doing these things, which is like, how can I help my brother? How can I spend time with my sister? How can I just help my mum doing things? And wasn't really thinking about what I was getting out of it. I just wanted to be there and help and try and be a better person again. And then obviously from that point, I decided to become a professional speaker. And then I did 3 years of professional speaking and really building my profile and learning the things I wanted to teach. And it wasn't from a textbook. As I explained before, I couldn't read, couldn't write. I still struggle today. So it was all about taking my life experience and working out, if I did it, could that help other people change their lives? And what I really noticed is what you said before, is that the tools that I was teaching were working because they were small, they were practical, and there was room to make mistakes, and there was room to get it wrong, which is the contrast. So Happiness Co. was built on that, which is contribution. One big thing I noticed when I was a professional speaker, and obviously I still professionally speak now, but when I was a professional speaker without Happiness Co., is I would fly around and jump on stage, man. And you can imagine me jumping on stage, talking about that story I just told you. And, you know, then people really feeling that emotion. And obviously the room of people are there because they're either grieving or they're hurting or something in their life is not right. You know, most people come and listen to me speak because there was something missing. And I would get, you know, guys and girls to stand up and tell me what they're going through, or jump on stage and tell me about their pain and their suffering. And when you get hired by other companies to do this particular work, I always used to wonder, that person that was crying in the audience and they got up and shared their pain and their suffering and all the challenge that they've gone through, when they sit down and I jumped on the airplane and I left, or I jumped in the car and went home, who looks after them now? And not just who looks after them now, but I wonder what they're thinking right now. Like I used to sit up in my bed wondering what you were thinking about because you were crying in the audience. And as you said, these big companies ask you all this money to help you better your life. But then I hear all these terrible stories about people actually not fulfilling the promises that they made. And you know, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in this game. And I'm sure you've seen many yourself. And I started to see that there was a lot of holes. People saying they care, but never cared enough. Cared as long as the bills were being paid. And I said, I wanted to make Happiness Co. more meaningful than that. I wanted to be more socially responsible than that. So, you know, suicide's the biggest killer of men under the age of 45 in Australia. I said, that stat's too big. That's too alarming. You know, divorce rates at record high, 54%. That's too big. That's too alarming. Like there's a gap here to just be an everyday kind of company. You know, the thing about being an everyday kind of person, like being like my best mate was to me when I was going through the hard parts of my life. He was there every single day with me. He supported me so much in that process without expectation. So I wanted to build Happiness Co. the same way, which is not what you said, not what you do, how you make people feel, like my dad told me. I wanted to make people feel good again and then use the tools to better their life. I wanted to use my best friend, which is he was there with me every single day unconditionally. I wanted to be that to people. I wanted to be my girlfriend that supported me, which is unconditional. I wanted to be my mom that was unconditional. So I used all the aspects of my life that I felt at times that I got wrong or I didn't appreciate, and I built that into Happiness Co. And I honestly believe that's why we've thrived, because we've taken the fundamental core emotional needs of a person that I needed back then and placed them into a company. And it's not even about money. You know, I don't know any other companies in Australia, to be honest, that our prices go down by the more people that do it. So you think about it. A 21-day happiness challenge, for instance, is $97. That's what it is. And, you know, that's like $4 a day. So it's ridiculously cheap anyway. And that's me full full-time for 21 days, but we bring in big capital sponsorship and investments to make sure our programs stay low priced. But what happens is I sell contributions. So I'm like, Barry, help me help Beth, and Beth, help me help Robbie, and Robbie, help me help Jim. So it's like when you buy Happiness Co, you're directly helping the person next to you. And then what happens is the price drops, the price drops, and the price drops. And I have this overall vision and dream, man, that I want to be like a Medicare. So the first development, self-help, self-worth, anxiety, depression company that is free for people, but the value in it because I know it's going to make them better. And that's a big dream. That's having a big, crazy out there goal. But I believe that it's possible because it's everyone's responsibility to make the world a little better. And what we're doing right now is working. It's working when you tap into people's focus of contribution. Did I explain that properly?
Yeah, I love that. And so who are some of the, like what are some of the ways that you get involved with people? Like I've seen some random stuff where you go and buy people's coffees and things like that. You mentioned you guys run like a 21-day happiness challenge. What are some of the ways that you give back to the community, or some of the ways that, you really spread your sparkle?
Yeah, mate. I think probably the one big thing is the emphasis on attention. Now, people talk a lot about time these days, but I think it's really attention that matters, which is I can spend time with you and be on my phone. I can spend time with you watching TV on the couch. I'm talking about really giving people our attention. And I believe in my experience that when you start to feel heard, you start to heal. So one of the big things I get people to invest in. So for instance, if you're going to buy something from Happiness Co, I'm actually asking you to help me buy time to give someone attention. I'm not actually asking you to buy Happiness Co to make a profit. I'm saying, hey, Barry, would you buy this so I can go give this person some time and attention because they need it most? So we're actually trying to buy time for people. Because think about the psychologists or the doctors of the world, and there's nothing wrong with that, but think about it, or a coach. There's a time frame that you put in, and then you have that time, and then the next one comes in and it's more money, the next money, because it's linked to money, right? So I get 30 minutes and it's going to cost you $50, for instance. And then I have to get the next person in to make $50. We don't work like that. We work on a model that it's not about who's sitting in the chair for how long. It's about the attention they need for, it could be 2 hours, it could be 1 hour, it could be 5 minutes. But the funding models that we use are about buying time for people. What we do is we go out and do random acts of kindness. It's not about money, but we probably spend $1,000 a month on random acts of kindness, coffees, flowers, but sometimes it's not even money. We'll help ladies with their shopping. To their car. We'll, pump people's fuel for them at the fuel stops. And we always try and make an active choice or a conscious choice whenever we can to do something kind. And that's one thing a day. And I think everyone watching this right now gets a choice every single day to try and do something kind. And I kind of thought about it from a process that we have about 60,000 thoughts a day, right? On average, give or take. And, we make about 30,000 decisions a day. And, most of them are subconscious. But I thought, well, how could I, really home in on making it really simple, which is that maybe 5 decisions a day, going home every single day and kissing your wife on the lips and saying, I love you. That's a pretty good decision, I reckon. Awesome. Doing one thing for your health every single day, like going for a walk or a run or doing something, stretching. Pretty good decision. Looking after, maybe looking at your money, doing a budget plan. So I just kind of build it. And I thought, well, one thing I want to do every single day as an active choice out of my 30,000 decisions or choices was to do something nice for someone else. And I've been doing that for years now. It's really worked, and it's really helped Happiness Co be perceived in such a positive light. And then we do 21-day happiness challenge. We do 10-week programs. We do our live events. We do Happiness Co EDU, so working in schools with kids on bullying and anxiety. But I guess the key to all this is the cost model is so low. So it's like an irresistible offer you can't resist. And you know enough about irresistible offers. But that is the only offer. You know, irresistible offers and core and then program, we've all learned that funnel. There is no other offer. There only is the irresistible one because we've already taken care of everything else by our funding models. Yeah. So I the Happiness Co tax. We tax corporates. I think about the big corporates and some big, philanthropists. We tax them as such. And we use that funding to make a difference. And that's why we get to go out and do these amazing things, because it's not a transaction between you paying me for my service. And because of that, there's not the pressure for us to perform like a normal company, which is sales, return on EOI, all these things that we look at. And they're really, really important. I'm just sharing this because the way we've done it allows us to make a real focus on contribution. So we're always looking at ongoing, in terms of ongoing development for our programs. Like we're just about to launch a parents program. So parents to deal with their kids. That's not going to be run by me, but that's about to be run by parents, teaching parents how to deal with the challenges of their children through mindset, emotional mastery. Because I'm not sure about you, Barry. I must have missed the class when I was in primary school when I teach you about emotional mastery. I must have had that day off every single week.
Well, it's really funny. I'm not sure if you know, but we actually launched a program, a Little People Empowerment Project, about 6 weeks ago into schools. So we've created a whole bunch of different programs to go into schools. We've had in the last 2 weeks, we've had over 1,000 children register, like kids through school, so classes. We plan on hitting 2,000 and launching it in another 4 weeks, which is pretty awesome because you're right, like, you know, a lot of the stuff that we work with and deal with business owners and entrepreneurs we coach and mentor now, a lot of that could have been resolved back in school with the right programs and curriculums, and not a lot of the stuff that we've learned. And I actually just got off a call with a lady in Ireland before I spoke to you. She's been approached by the co-founders of the Green School to do some stuff as well, because she's like, yeah, the schooling model's broken. Traditional schooling model's broken. It doesn't work. The government's aware it doesn't work, but they don't know how to fix it, because kids are not coming out the other end in a way that sees them fulfilled, inspired, happy, motivated and purposeful. And, you know, touch on what you said before around contribution, you know, something I've noticed a lot of our clients is that the people typically come to work with us for two reasons they're aware of. One is they want more money, and two is they want more time. What they really want is they want the experience of having more money or more time, which is a sense of fulfillment. And, you know, what we see time and time again is that, you know, money and time only gets you so far and only gets you so much fulfillment. Then it becomes about contribution. Like, contribution is the ultimate fulfillment, if you ask me. And if you take on board anything of the 10,000 hours I've done coaching and mentoring in this space, is that contribution, there's no cap on the feeling and the fulfillment that you gained from the contribution, but not contributing to get something, not going out and giving something to subconsciously or, you know, consciously, unconsciously get something, but giving for the gift of purely giving. And so, you know, I think that's a ritual we can kind of invite everyone who's watching and listening to this today to do is, you know, like, what one thing can you do every single day for somebody else that gives you no benefit whatsoever?
Yeah, I love that. And I think if you keep it really simple like that, and you know, there's a great saying that change your meaning, change your life, right? You don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are.
Yeah.
I used to have in my life, like, my meaning was my dad left me, I hated him, and I hated the world because of it. That was my meaning, right?
Yeah.
That was how I lived my life, and what you focus on, you become. Think about, I just focused on that every single day. So I became someone that hated life.
Yeah.
And I now look at the different meaning, and this has been a conflict at times between, you know, my brother and sister. You know, they've called me on it before, and, you know, it's not their meaning, it's my meaning, my story, right? They lost their dad too. Yeah. My meaning now is completely different. My meaning is that I'm the man that you're proud to see today, for instance, and the work I've done in the space of helping people overcome their challenges. I'm very proud to be this person, but the meaning is that my dad sacrificed his life to make me great. That's a hard pill to swallow, mate, if you're my brother and sister, because mate, without him dying, mate, I would never be here, because before that, I was a drop kick. I really mean that. I played football and I was confident, but I had no drive to do anything in my life. I had no focus on being a speaker. I had no focus on contribution. I had no focus on doing anything good in the world. It was happy, but I was all about, you know, me, as we are. We're very selfish at times, but I didn't have the pain tapped onto that. But after he passed away and after I put my life back together, I realized that I could use that to make a fundamental difference in the world. And I believe that things happen to us to be able to do one or two things, either to disempower you or empower you. Everyone listening to this right now has that same choice. Like, you can always change that meaning and fulfill whatever it is that you're looking for. One of the big things I wanted to look at was his legacy. He was a good man. And a lot of people changed the way they saw him after he died because he took his own life. And I remember the stigma around it. People thought he was sick, and people thought he was weak, and people thought he was selfish, and how could he do it? And it really tarnished a bit of his own life and legacy. And I wanted to rebuild that for him and leave it strong. And then one thing I wanted to do for me personally was live the way I wanted to be remembered. And I try and do that every single day. So a real simple tip for everyone watching as well is just try and live every day like you want to be remembered, because ultimately you never know when it's over. And I do try and actively live like that, because when you've lost so many people to death, I guess you become a specialist in losing people ultimately. I don't want to leave anything to chance. And I think that's why Happiness Co. has been a successful model as well, is because I've really been persistent and driven and hungry, but not, as you said, to make more money or make more time, which was a lot of people look for, just to fundamentally try and make the world a little better. And then to know that when I put my head on my pillow tonight, that I did my bit, and maybe, 30, 40, 50 years from now, or maybe my grandkids one day will say the world was a better place because
yeah. Julian Pace, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I really enjoyed our chat, and I trust that for everyone out there watching or listening to this today has got a lot out of it. Is there one final thought you'd like to leave everyone with before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I just would like to let people know that life is hard. It is very, very difficult. And to remember that you're not alone. And, a problem shared is a problem halved, and connection and love. There's a real place for connection and love still. And you may have seen this only a few weeks ago, but we won a national award in Sydney, right? And it was across 1,400 companies in Australia for small business Australia. And we won it. And I remember people coming up to me and saying, like, what's your philosophy? What is it? And I said, love and connection and happiness. And they're like, how does love and connection and happiness win a business award? And I think it's a great reminder for people out there that love and happiness and connection still play a fundamental role in each other's lives, to making us more and making us more happy, to thrive in business. And in terms of the work that you do, to help us thrive more in business, really them three things are still a big part of that.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
Anytime, mate. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.